Hi, it's Charlie, and in this tutorial I'm going to string four sequences together and add some action script that lets a player interact with them. So let me bring over Adobe Animate, and I've got a slide up here showing the requirements for this project. So the first one is that there'll be four sequences: a splash screen, a screen that allows text input and then allows the player to advance with the enter key, another similar screen that allows the player to advance with a button, and then followed by a video at the end. There's some global characters, or some global keys that the user can use to navigate between the sequences, Control 0 through Control 3, and we will take care of those in this tutorial. On the splash screen, the player can advance using either the Enter key, the space bar, or a mouse click. And then in the text sequences, the player on the first one will be able to advance after all the text is input with the Enter key, and then on the second one, after all the text is entered, well, anytime with the Go button. On the two text sequences, I will demo those in action, but I'll save the action script that builds them for the next tutorial. Okay, let's start this project by creating our four resources: the video, the two text sequences, and the splash screen. I'm going to keep my timeline pretty simple. We'll start with 4 layers, and I really only want to use 4 frames for this, and we'll use ActionScript to jump between those frames. So the first thing I'm going to do is just make this timeline a little bit bigger so that those frames aren't squashed all between. And as you can see, I've set up my 4 frames to just have blank content in them for the splash layer, the text 1, the text 2, and the video. And I like to use the keyboard to navigate between the frames. You can use the period and the comma to go back and forth. Let me actually turn on my keycaster here so that you can see the keys that I'm hitting. Might be a little bit helpful in the video. So you can see that's easy navigation in the frames. At the end of each layer, I've set up a keyframe. That's where the content will go for each of these layers. And so you can just see this little staircase. We'll have our splash screen in this keyframe, the first text sequence in this keyframe, the second text sequence in this keyframe, and the last sequence, the video, in this keyframe. Alright, first we're going to take care of those global key navigations. The Command 0 to go to the splash screen, Command 1, Command 2, Command 3 to go to the video screen. You can see the first thing that I did is I added a new layer here called Actions, just by clicking that New Layer button. And just so that I can see which sequence I'm in, I'm not going to put the full splash screen in there, but I'd like to add some content to the stage here. So I'm just going to choose the text tool and type the word splash here. That looks good. And then I'll select that element, and I'm just going to make sure that it's centered pretty well, 220, 180 coordinates, and 16-point font. So that'll say splash. I've done that as well on the text keyframe, the text 1 keyframe, the text 2 keyframe, and the video keyframe. Now I'd like to write the action script to be able to navigate between those. So I'm going to press my F9 key. Let me again put my keycaster on so that you can see that. F9 will bring up the action script, and I want to paste in some action script that I've got on the clipboard here, and we'll walk through it quickly. So the first line here is adding an event listener, and you can see that it's adding it to the stage. That's important. I don't want the event listener to only listen if the focus is on an object on the stage. I want it to listen to any event that happens on the whole stage. The event that I'm listening to specifically is the key up event. So when the key goes down, this won't fire, but when it comes back up, it will fire. And when it fires, it's going to execute this function on key up. And this function is defined down here. You can see that the first thing the function does is it checks to see if the control key is active. and we'll do a demonstration of that. Quick note here, I wanted to use the command key, but it's problematic for some reason on the Mac. The command key gets captured by the operating system for other things. So I chose to just switch that over to the control key to save some time. So this checks to see if the control key is active, this if statement, and if it is active, it'll execute the code inside the if statement. The code inside the if statement is very simple. It just checks to see what the event key code is passed into this function, and if the key code is the number 0 on the keyboard, it will go to frame 1 and stop. If it's the number 1, it will go to frame 2 and stop, and so on and so forth. I've also got a trace command in there. That's for debugging purposes, so that you can see the keys being pressed in the output window if you're testing the movie in Flash. Now, an important note, these keyboard combinations, control and command, they don't work if you're testing the movie in the Animate environment. I'll show you that really quick. If we go to the test command under the control menu and fire that up, it'll start my movie, and I'm holding down control and pressing 0. You can see that on my keycaster down there. But if we look at the output window, no keys are being registered in my trace. Those trace events aren't firing. Command, same thing. So what I have to do is I have to close that down, make sure my movie is saved here, and I have to export the movie to a SWIFT file. So I'll choose Export Movie from the File menu. That name looks good. I want to overwrite the previous one that I made. Now I'm going to jump over to Finder, find that movie, and I'll just double click it to test it. Now this opens up in a window in the Flash player, so we're in the native Flash player now. And I'm going to try my control keys now. So control 0 should be on the splash. Control 1 navigates to text 1. Control 2, control 3, and control 0 goes back to splash. I can also do this in full screen. If I hit Command F, it puts me in full screen mode. And I'll just navigate between really quickly again, just like we want. Alright, now that we have the global key navigation working, I'm going to add some content to each one of these sequences. So to do that, I'll start with this splash screen. And first thing I'm going to do, I still want to keep this label splash here so I recognize where it is. I'm going to go to the library and drag a logo onto here, onto this screen. And we'll put it right in the middle. And then I'll use my text tool and add a few instructions. Press enter, space, press enter. We'll leave the click off for now. Press enter or space to continue. Alright, I'm going to change the color of that text so it's not yelling at us. And that looks like a good enough splash screen. Now, I'm going to go back to the ActionScript code by pressing F9. And remember, we put in these keyboard handlers for Control 0, Control 1 through Control 3. I'm going to label that section of the code our global keyboard handlers, because those are going to happen all over the place. And then I'm going to go to the bottom of that if statement. I'm going to add another section just for frame 1. Because when we're in frame 1, we want the enter and the space key to make the movie go forward. Now I've pasted in some code here that I already wrote, and I'll just walk you through it. So the first if statement says if we are in frame 1, because we only want this code to run if we're in the first frame, check the key code. If the key is enter, proceed to the next frame. Now that looks pretty good. I'm going to add one more case here, and we'll check for the space bar as well. And for either of those keys, we want to proceed to the next frame. All right, let's save it, hide that action script code, and we'll give it a test. Export it out to the SWF again. And then let's run that file and test it out. Make it full screen. And first of all, we'll make sure that our globals still work. Okay, those are working nicely. I'm going to get myself on the splash screen and press the Enter key. Alright, that works. Pressing Enter again does not make me go forward, but I can get back to the splash screen with Command 0, and we'll try the space, and that works as well. But it doesn't work on these others, so let's just verify that. Space doesn't work there, space doesn't work there. Enter, 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 enter. Looks good. Okay, one of our requirements for this splash screen was to allow the mouse click to make it advance to the next sequence as well. So let's add that in right now. Change the instructions here a little bit. And then we just need to look at this action script. And in the bottom here, we need to add a listener for mouse events. I've pasted in some code here so you can see on the stage I've added another event listener, but this time it's for the mouse click. And it's going to execute this function called click handler when it hears a mouse click. Click handler is pretty simple. It just checks to make sure that the current frame is 1, and if it is, it advances to the next frame. So let's test that out by exporting out to Flash, or to SWF rather. Try it in full screen again. Make sure our enter still works. Make sure our command keys still work. They do. Let's try clicking the mouse here. And that works. If I click again on this frame, it does not advance it. So we'll go back using Control 0. And I can click anywhere on the stage. It doesn't matter because I added that event listener to the stage, not to a particular object. Alright. And that's mouse events. Alright, that's about it for this tutorial. We've got our 4 sequences. We have our global key navigation, Control 0 through Control 3. We've got a splash screen and a way to advance from it. And then the last thing I'll show you today are these 2 text boxes. Actually, we're just going to show one of them. But the feature that we'll show on it is reading text from a file. So I've set up a text file over in the same directory as my project called text1.txt, and it just has some simple hello world text in it. And over in Animate, I've written some action script, which I'll highlight in the next tutorial. I'll just give you a preview of it now. Get over to the right project here. So the action script is in the same file. It's all in this global file. As you can see, I've written a lot more code since those global keys. And if we export this to our SWF file as usual for testing and give it a run, let's see, we'll put it in full screen mode. The mouse, you can see I've got a cursor there and a text box. I'm typing keys. I'm not actually typing those keys. And then when I press enter, it moves on to the next text box. Alright, and our control keys still navigate back. So that's it for this tutorial. Next time we'll dive into the action script to make that text box happen and navigate to the next text box, put a button on the screen, and then finally finish with the video at the end of the sequence.